It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said. The interview was a major contribution to making my parents' relationship worse and has since hurt countless others.
Before the first light of dawn touched the palace gardens, an unusual tension settled over the royal estate, a quiet unease that moved through corridors like a whisper carried on cold air, and within hours that whisper would explode into a headline shaking the monarchy to its core, because Prince William had made a decision no one expected, a decision that would cut off every financial link between the crown and Queen Camilla's extended family, a move both shocking and deliberate, sparked by bombshell revelations from her ex-husband that threatened to unravel decades of carefully crafted royal image. And as palace staff hurried through marble hallways clutching folders and phones, the atmosphere grew heavy with uncertainty, because this was not merely a family disagreement, but a calculated strike at the heart of royal finances. And when the news finally broke, it spread like wildfire across television screens and social media feeds, commentators questioning what could possibly drive the future king to such a bold step, while insiders whispered that a secret recording had surfaced, one containing claims so explosive they demanded immediate action, claims that spoke of hidden financial networks, quiet transfers, and a system built in shadows. And as journalists scrambled for details, the story deepened, revealing that the alleged revelations described a long-running pattern of funds quietly moving toward relatives beyond the palace walls, money categorized as support yet, rumored to sustain lifestyles far removed from official duty. And William, known for his measured nature, reportedly ordered a full review, poring over figures late into the night, each number adding weight to the growing storm inside him, advisors urging caution, warning of backlash, warning of division, yet others insisting the monarchy's credibility depended on transparency. And outside the palace gates, the public mood shifted from curiosity to fascination, debates igniting about loyalty, accountability, and the future of the crown, some praising the prince for drawing a firm line, others questioning whether the move risked deepening family fractures, while the alleged recording from the ex-husband continued to dominate headlines, its narrative painting a picture of ambition, influence, and carefully managed alliances, whether fact or speculation. It fueled a media frenzy that refused to slow, and in the midst of it all, Camilla remained largely silent, her legal team issuing statements rejecting the accusations, calling them misleading and unfounded. Yet the silence itself seemed to amplify the drama, creating a vacuum filled by endless commentary, and as the story unfolded, analysts pointed to history, reminding audiences that the monarchy has weathered scandals before, yet rarely one tied so directly to finances and internal control, and William's decision appeared to signal something broader, a message that the modern monarchy would operate under stricter scrutiny, a shift from tradition to accountability. And within royal circles the implications were enormous, because cutting funds was not just symbolic, it altered relationships, expectations, and long-standing arrangements that had existed quietly for years, and observers noted how swiftly the order was executed. No gradual transition, no public negotiation, simply a decisive stop, reinforcing the perception of a prince determined to act rather than delay. And as commentators dissected every angle, speculation grew about what this meant for the royal family's future balance. Would it strengthen unity through clarity, or deepen divisions already simmering beneath the surface? And while official statements remained measured, the tension was visible, public appearances scrutinized for subtle signs, body language analyzed frame by frame. Every gesture turned into a clue, and amid this atmosphere one theme emerged again and again, that this was not just about money but about trust, perception, and the evolving role of the monarchy in a world demanding openness. And as days passed, the story refused to fade, instead becoming a defining narrative, a moment where tradition met modern expectation, where private matters spilled into global conversation, and whether seen as bold leadership or risky confrontation, Prince William's decision had undeniably shifted the conversation, leaving audiences wondering what further revelations might surface and how the royal family would navigate the storm ahead. Because in a world of royalty, where image is everything, a single decisive act can echo far beyond palace walls, reshaping perception, redefining authority, and reminding everyone that even centuries-old institutions are not immune to sudden, dramatic change. The ripple effect of the decision did not stop at palace gates, because within hours a financial cut became more than a private administrative move. It transformed into a global spectacle, analysts dissecting every possible motive, historians comparing it to past royal crises, and insiders quietly admitting that the monarchy had entered unfamiliar territory, where internal decisions were no longer contained but instantly magnified by public scrutiny. And as the day unfolded, reports suggested that senior aides were scrambling to map out the consequences, calculating how many long-standing arrangements would collapse overnight, while others worried about the symbolic damage. Because money within royal circles has always represented more than wealth. It represented loyalty, access, and influence, and removing it was like redrawing invisible lines of power, lines that had been stable for decades, yet now seem fragile. And in living rooms across the country, viewers watched the drama unfold, some praising the boldness, seeing it as proof of accountability, others questioning whether it signaled deeper fractures within the family, fractures that had been carefully hidden behind ceremonial smiles and balcony waves. And the speculation intensified when commentators revisited the ex-husband's bombshell claims, replaying them again and again, asking whether they were exaggerations born from resentment or revelations that exposed uncomfortable truths. And regardless of their accuracy, the timing could not have been more explosive, because they arrived at a moment when public trust in institutions was already fragile, and suddenly the monarchy found itself defending not only its traditions but its financial transparency. And as night fell, the palace lights burned longer than usual, meetings stretching into the early hours, advisors presenting scenarios, legal teams drafting responses, and communication staff preparing for the next day's headlines. Yet through all of it, one reality remained clear. The decision could not be undone. The funds were cut, the message delivered, and the consequences now unfolding in real time. And observers noted that Prince William appeared calm during his next public appearance, his composure interpreted by some as confidence, by others as determination. Yet behind that calm lay the weight of a decision that would shape perceptions of his leadership for years to come. Because stepping into the role of future king means balancing tradition with reform, loyalty with accountability. And in this moment he seemed to choose reform, a choice that resonated with younger audiences who expect openness, but also unsettled traditionalists who fear rapid change. And meanwhile, the silence from Camilla's extended family added another layer of intrigue. No direct responses, no interviews, only brief statement from representatives denying wrongdoing, leaving a void filled by speculation. And the media cycle fed on that silence, panel discussions growing more heated, headlines more dramatic, and every rumor treated as potential fact, illustrating how quickly narrative can outrun certainty. And as the days passed, the story evolved from breaking news into a defining chapter, one that commentators suggested might mark the beginning of a new era, where financial accountability within the monarchy becomes not optional but essential. Yet others warned that such internal conflicts risk undermining unity at a time when stability is crucial. And so the debate continued, echoing far beyond the United Kingdom, because the royal family remains a global symbol, and any shift within it resonates worldwide. And ultimately what began as a quiet pre-dawn decision had transformed into a moment of reckoning, a dramatic intersection of personal history, public expectation, and institutional survival, leaving audiences watching closely, wondering whether this bold move would strengthen the crown or expose deeper vulnerabilities. And in the unpredictable world of royalty, where tradition meets modern scrutiny, one decisive action can alter everything, turning whispers into thunder and private choices into history. The following morning brought no calm, only deeper uncertainty, as newspapers rolled off printing presses with bold headlines declaring a royal rupture that few had predicted, and the phrase "funds cut" echoed across broadcasts, turning a private administrative order into a public turning point. And commentators began to ask whether this was simply about finances or something far more symbolic, because within royal tradition, financial ties often reflect deeper bonds of loyalty and influence, and severing them suggested a deliberate attempt to reshape the monarchy's internal structure. And as analysts studied the timeline, they returned again to the ex-husband's revelations, noting how the alleged claims of hidden networks and discreet transfers had shaken confidence, whether proven or not. The mere suggestion of secrecy had triggered a powerful reaction, and for Prince William, whose public image has long been tied to modernization and accountability, the pressure to act decisively may have felt unavoidable. And within palace, Corridor's aides reportedly debated the long-term implications, wondering whether this would establish a precedent for stricter oversight of royal finances, or whether it risked opening old wounds that had barely healed, and the public, watching from afar, interpreted every development through their own lens, some seeing courage in confronting uncomfortable questions, others fearing the decision could deepen divisions at a time when unity was essential, and the atmosphere grew even more intense. When commentators highlighted how quickly the move had been implemented, no gradual transition, no extended consultations made public, only a firm order executed with immediate effect, reinforcing perception of a prince determined to send a clear message, and as the narrative unfolded, discussions expanded beyond personalities to the future of the monarchy itself. Could an institution rooted in tradition adapt to a world demanding transparency? Could loyalty coexist with accountability? And as these questions filled airwaves, the silence from key figures continued, fueling speculation and keeping the story alive, and in that silence many observers sense a shift, a moment where the monarchy was no longer simply reacting to scandal but actively redefining its boundaries, and whether history would judge the move as bold leadership or risky confrontation remained uncertain. Yet one thing was undeniable: the decision had transformed Whispers into a defining chapter, a dramatic reminder that even the most established institutions can be reshaped by a single, decisive act, leaving the world watching closely as the royal family navigated the storm and the future of the crown hung delicately in the balance. As the controversy deepened, the atmosphere surrounding the monarchy seemed to shift from shock to sustained suspense, because the longer the silence lasted, the louder the speculation grew, and observers began to analyze every subtle detail, from carefully worded press releases to the timing of public appearances, searching for clues that might reveal the emotional undercurrents within the royal household. And while official sources remained composed, the sense of urgency behind palace doors appeared undeniable, aides moving quickly between offices, phones ringing late into the night, and legal advisors reportedly preparing strategies for multiple scenarios, each more complex than the last. Because once financial ties are severed in such a visible manner, the ripple effects extend far beyond accounting ledgers, touching relationships, expectations, and long-standing informal agreements that had quietly shaped royal dynamics for years. And commentators pointed out that the decision also carried symbolic weight, suggesting a shift towards stricter oversight and modern accountability, values increasingly demanded by the public, yet not always easy to balance with tradition. And so the debate intensified, with some voices praising the decisive leadership, arguing that transparency strengthens institutions, while others warned that internal conflict risks weakening the very stability the monarchy relies upon. And in this tense environment, the ex-husband's bombshell revelations continued to dominate discussion, replayed in documentaries, debated in opinion columns, and dissected by royal historians, each interpretation adding another layer to an already complex narrative. And whether those claims were fully substantiated or not, their impact had already been felt, triggering a chain reaction that no one could easily reverse. And as the story unfolded across international media, it became clear that the implications reached far beyond one family decision. Because the British monarchy remains a global symbol, and any sign of internal division resonates worldwide, prompting discussions about reform, relevance, and the future role of royalty in a rapidly changing world. And within that larger context, Prince William's action began to look less like a single response and more like a defining statement, a signal that the next generation might approach leadership differently, prioritizing accountability even when it risked controversy. And yet the human dimension remained impossible to ignore, because behind headlines and analysis stood a family navigating personal loyalties and public duty, a delicate balance that has challenged monarchies for centuries. And as days turned into weeks, the story refused to fade, instead evolving into a continuing narrative filled with new interpretations and unanswered questions, leaving audiences captivated, wondering whether this dramatic financial cut would ultimately strengthen the institution or expose deeper vulnerabilities. And in the end, what began as a quiet decision before dawn had transformed into a powerful moment of reckoning, one that illuminated the fragile intersection of tradition, power, and perception, and reminded the world that even the most enduring crowns can be reshaped by a single bold choice, a choice that echoes far beyond palace walls and into history itself. The tension did not fade with time. Instead, It seemed to settle into a slow-burning drama that kept the public glued to every new development, because each passing day raised fresh questions about what truly lay behind the decision and how deeply the revelations had cut into the royal structure, and commentators began to note that the financial cutoff represented more than a reaction. It appeared to be a boundary, a line drawn to redefine who benefited from royal resources and who did not, and as discussions unfolded across television studios and digital platforms, analysts revisited the monarchy's long history of navigating scandal, comparing this moment to earlier crises that tested its resilience. Yet many agreed that the modern era's relentless scrutiny made the situation uniquely challenging, because nothing remained private, every rumor amplified, every silence interpreted. And within this storm, Prince William's decisive move continued to dominate the narrative, portrayed by supporters as a firm step toward transparency, while critics warned that internal tensions might spill further into public view, potentially complicating the delicate balance between personal relationships and institutional duty. And the alleged bombshell revelations from Camilla's ex-husband remained at the center of speculation, their claims discussing countless variations, some emphasizing the idea of hidden financial channels, others questioning the motives behind such disclosures. And, regardless of interpretation, the effect was undeniable. They had created a climate in which decisive action seemed almost inevitable, and as palace aides worked quietly to stabilize the situation, observers noticed subtle shifts in messaging, statements emphasizing unity, responsibility, and the monarchy's commitment to serving the public, language carefully chosen to reassure audiences while avoiding direct confrontation. And yet the intrigue persisted, because the absence of detailed explanations left space for imagination, fueling documentaries, opinion pieces, and social media debates that stretched far beyond the United Kingdom. And in many ways, the controversy became symbolic of a broader transformation, a moment where tradition confronted the expectations of a modern audience demanding accountability. And the figure of Prince William emerged at the center of that transformation, portrayed as a leader willing to take risks to protect institutional credibility, even when those risks carried personal consequences. And as days turned into weeks, the narrative evolved from breaking news into a defining storyline, one that highlighted the fragile intersection of power, loyalty, and perception within the royal family. And while the ultimate outcome remained uncertain, the impact of the decision was already clear. It had reshaped conversations about royal finances, sparked debates about reform, and reminded the world that even centuries-old institutions must adapt to survive. And so the story continued to unfold like a slow, dramatic documentary, each new development adding depth to a chapter that began with a quiet pre-dawn decision and grew into a moment of reckoning, leaving audiences watching closely, aware that the echoes of this bold move might influence the monarchy's future for years to come, a reminder that in the world of royalty, a single act can transform whispers into history and redefine the meaning of the crown itself.